Ever walk away from a conversation and you just feel like totally drained, like you lost somehow, even though you can't quite put your finger on how?
Ugh, yeah.
You mentioned wanting to decode those situations, and well, that's exactly what this deep dive is all about. We're tackling emotional manipulation,
Okay.
how to spot it in the wild, why it makes you feel so crummy, and most importantly, how
Yes.
to take back your power.
It's tricky, right? Because it often hides in plain sight.
Yeah.
Emotional manipulation, it really preys on those core human things,
Mhm.
like wanting connection, wanting things to be harmonious,
Right.
which is why just recognizing it, that's the first step to protecting yourself.
Absolutely. And you brought some fascinating research to the table today, and I actually found a podcast episode unveiling emotional manipulation. That, I think, pairs perfectly with what you've been digging into.
Great.
Ready to unpack it all.
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so before we get into all the nitty-gritty tactics and stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
let's start with the basics. What is emotional manipulation? I mean, it's got to be more than just disagreeing with someone, right?
Exactly. We're not just talking about a difference of opinion, right?
Mm.
Emotional manipulation is about intentional influence. It's using someone's emotions to control them, often for the manipulator's own benefit.
Mm.
And that creates this really unhealthy power imbalance.
So not just annoying or frustrating,
Right.
but actually damaging.
Exactly. This stuff can really impact your mental health, your relationships.
Yeah.
It can even mess with your sense of self-worth.
Wow.
Think of it like this. Imagine a friend who always has a last-minute emergency and needs a favor.
Oh, I know that friend.
Right. You're a good friend. You step up time and time again.
Every
But
time.
when you need something, they're suddenly nowhere to be found.
Ugh, yeah. Or how about the partner who's showering you with compliments and affection when you agree with them?
Oh, yeah.
But then if you have a differing opinion, silent treatment for days,
Yeah.
that push and pull can really mess with your head.
And that is a classic example of emotional manipulation.
Really?
The podcast actually gave a really powerful real-life example, very similar to that. This woman, Sarah, she was describing how her partner's entire demeanor, his behavior, would completely change based on whether or not she agreed with him.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what makes this so insidious is that it can be really subtle and often disguised as something else. It's like emotional camouflage.
Exactly. And it can be tough to spot because it often plays on our good intentions.
Yeah.
That desire to be there for the people that we care about.
Right.
That's why understanding the tactics is so, so crucial.
Okay, so we know this emotional camouflage is out there, right?
Right.
But how do we actually learn to see past it? Like, what are the signs?
Well, that podcast episode that you shared, they actually break down some really common tactics.
Okay.
They talk about gaslighting,
Mm-hmm.
guilt tripping, playing the victim, love bombing, followed by withholding affection.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, there's the always frustrating passive-aggressive behavior.
Those all sound seriously sneaky. Like it's a whole playbook for emotional manipulation.
And they all kind of work by triggering similar things in you, right?
Yeah.
Self-doubt, that obligation, fear of upsetting the manipulator.
Yeah.
It's all about control.
Ugh, I hate that feeling. Like when you're walking on eggshells around someone,
Oh, tell me about it.
constantly afraid to say or do the wrong thing.
Yes. And your research, actually, when you're looking into the signs of emotional manipulation,
Yeah.
it touches on this. You mentioned this feeling of being constantly on edge around certain people.
Yes.
And that is a huge red flag.
It really is. It's like you always have to be anticipating their next moves. Like you're
Yes.
playing a game where only they know the rules, which is not fun.
Exactly. And honestly, when you're stuck in that constant state of anxiety, it's exhausting. No wonder one of the signs that you found in your research was this feeling of being totally drained.
100%. It's like all your energy is being systematically siphoned away.
It's like your emotional battery is constantly being drained.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, manipulators will often actually try to isolate you from your support systems. So your friends, your family, anyone who might.
I'll give you a reality check.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like that example from the podcast with Sarah
Yes.
and how her partner would make her feel so guilty for wanting to go out with her friends.
Yeah, like she was betraying him by.
Yes. Like if she didn't prioritize him above all else,
Yes.
then she didn't care about their relationship.
Exactly.
It's so manipulative.
And it worked.
Of course it did.
She started avoiding all those social events because
Mm-hmm.
she just didn't want to deal with the guilt trips
Right.
or, the silent treatment that would inevitably follow.
Oh, every time.
And it's heartbreaking because over time, this isolation, it just makes you even more susceptible to the manipulation.
Totally. Because it's like they're cutting off all of your lifelines so you become completely dependent on them. It's so messed up.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it just highlights how important it is to recognize those early warning signs
Right.
before you get in too deep.
Yeah, for sure. So, aside from that feeling of isolation, what other emotional fallout, I guess, should people be looking out for? Like, what are some signs that, hey, this could be a manipulative dynamic that you're caught up in?
Well, I mean, your research was spot on with that feeling of exhaustion we were talking about.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that. Think about it. When someone's constantly kind of twisting your emotions, making you doubt your own perceptions, it's confusing.
Oh, for sure.
You start questioning your own sanity.
Totally.
Like maybe I was being too sensitive, or
Yeah.
maybe I should just go on along with it.
Right,
It
right.
chips away at your self-worth.
Ugh, I totally see how those feelings, like the confusion, the exhaustion, the isolation,
Yeah.
they all just like spiral together and you end up feeling totally trapped and powerless.
And often afraid to rock the boat even more. But here's the good news.
Okay.
You are not powerless. There are ways to reclaim your power and break free from this kind of toxic dynamic.
Reclaiming your power. Ooh, I like that. It's so easy to feel powerless though, right?
It is.
When you're like caught in the web of manipulation, but you're saying we do have options.
Absolutely. And it starts with remembering. This is not about blaming yourself.
Okay.
You were not flawed because you fell into this trap. It's about giving yourself permission to step back and reclaim your autonomy.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Where do we even begin?
Well, both the podcast and your research really emphasize the importance of setting boundaries.
Okay.
It's about deciding what you will and will not tolerate,
Yeah.
and then communicating that clearly and directly.
Everyone always says set boundaries, but it always feels kind of vague and abstract,
Right.
Like, what does that actually look like in real life, especially when you're dealing with, like, a bona fide master manipulator?
Right. So it's about taking back control of the conversation, of the dynamic.
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say you're dealing with someone who's constantly hitting you with those guilt trips to get their way.
Oh, the worst.
Instead of giving in or, engaging in this circular argument, you might say something like, I hear that you're upset, but I'm not willing to continue this conversation when you're using guilt tactics.
Whoa. Okay, see, that's direct, which I like, but
Right.
I just imagine them being like, oh, you're right, I'll stop manipulating you now.
Right.
Like, what happens when they inevitably push back?
Oh, yeah. Pushback's almost guaranteed.
Okay.
They might try to guilt you further, invalidate your feelings, or flat out ignore your boundaries.
Yeah.
The key here is to just stay calm, stand your ground, and keep reiterating those boundaries.
Easier said than done, though, right?
It is. It takes
Yeah.
practice. It won't always be pretty.
Right.
Remember, you're trying to break free from, this deeply ingrained pattern, both for yourself and for the manipulator.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's where those, I statements that we've talked about can be really, really helpful.
Oh, yeah, like from the podcast.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, like, you're always making me feel bad, you can say, I feel hurt when you dismiss my feelings.
Exactly.
Ugh.
It shifts the focus from blaming them to just expressing your own experience, which makes it a lot harder for them to then deflect or invalidate how
Yeah.
you're feeling.
It's like you're taking back, reclaiming ownership of your own emotions.
Yes.
I love that.
And then don't underestimate the power of support.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to trusted friends, family members, a mental health professional.
Yeah.
Let them know what's going on.
Yeah, because I feel like when you are kind of like in the thick of it with someone who's manipulating you, you start to question yourself. Like, oh, maybe they are right. Maybe I am being too sensitive.
Right, those thought spirals.
Yes. Having that outside support can really help you stay grounded and trust your gut a little bit more.
100%. And remember, therapy can be incredibly valuable in these situations.
Oh, for sure.
A therapist can help equip you to develop those healthy coping strategies, rebuild your self-esteem, and then really give you the tools that you need to navigate these types of relationships in the future.
Because this isn't just about escaping one manipulative relationship. It's about breaking free from these patterns and creating healthier dynamics moving forward. So as we kind of wrap up here, I'm curious, what can we do to make ourselves less susceptible to emotional manipulation in the first place?
Ooh.
Is there a way to build up our defenses?
I love that question. It's about being proactive,
Right.
creating a strong foundation for yourself.
Yeah.
And Honestly, a lot of it comes down to those classic self-care practices.
Okay, so we're talking bubble baths and face masks here.
Those can be nice.
Yeah.
But we're talking more holistic self-care, prioritizing your mental health and your physical health. Get enough sleep, eat nourishing foods, move your body.
Okay.
It's about building that strong inner foundation.
Got it. So like when you're run down, when you're depleted, you're just an easier target for these kinds of people.
Exactly. But when you're taking care of yourself, you're naturally building your resilience.
Right.
And don't underestimate the power of mindfulness.
Okay.
Learning to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment, it can really help you catch those early warning signs.
Right.
Like, why am I suddenly feeling so anxious? Or why do I feel so obligated in this conversation?
Yes. It's like you're developing this like internal alarm system.
Precisely. And then finally, surround yourself with healthy, supportive people.
Yes.
The kind of people who respect your boundaries, who value your opinions, and who make you feel good about yourself.
It's like creating this force field of positivity. I love it.
Yes. Having your own back. It's about building a life where emotional manipulation just has no place.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We've covered so much ground today. From like identifying those sneaky tactics that these manipulators use to understanding their impact, but then most importantly, like empowering ourselves to break free.
Yes. And remember, your well-being, it is worth fighting for.
Yes, it is.
And if you're feeling even a little bit off about a relationship, trust your gut. There are resources available to support you.
100%. We've got links to some great resources in the show notes for you. And remember, you're not alone. Until next time, take care.